The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the host and guest and do not reflect the opinions or policies of the station, its owners, or its advertisers. All content should be considered editorial in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Recorded live, Cumberland County's smartest hour of talk radio. Welcome back to another edition of the Carolina Cabinet.
Well, everybody, good afternoon and welcome to the Carolina Cabinet. I'm your host, Peter Pappas, in studio with Mrs. Laura Mussler.
Wait a minute. What? Notes say beautiful co-host.
Beautiful co-host, Mrs. Laura Mussler. Thank you for the correction. Thank you. And joining us today is Mr. Lennie Friedman of Forward Party, North Carolina, correct? Well, welcome, Lennie, today. We at the Cabinet, we know this is the smartest hour of radio, and our job is to give a voice to the conservatives of Fayetteville, Cumberland County, and beyond. So Today's guest, we had a pretty unique journey from the trenches of the NFL to the trenches of American politics. So lucky you. You played offensive line for the Duke Blue Devils before being drafted in the second round of the NFL draft by the Denver Broncos. And you went on to play for several teams across the league. These days, you're no longer blocking defensive ends. You're trying to tackle something many Americans agree is broken, our political system. You now serve as vice chair of North Carolina's chapter of the Forward Party, a movement pushing election reforms like ranked choice voting and open primaries aimed at breaking the gridlock of the traditional two-party system. You're also involved with Rank the Vote, advocating for changes to how Americans cast their ballots. So today we're going to talk about whether a third-party movement can actually work in a state like North Carolina and whether the political system really needs the kind of reform that the Forward Party is pushing. So with that, welcome, sir.
Peter, Laura, appreciate it. Thanks for having me here today. Looking forward to our conversation.
As we are. So tell us, that was pretty much the quick bio about you. So really long time in football.
Yeah, so came down to Duke in '95. So played for Fred Goldsmith down here at Duke. Married a Tar Heel who followed me from New Jersey, and from Duke traveled all over the country. Played 10 years, 4 different teams. A bit of a lunch pail player, as I like to say. And then came back to North Carolina. Got involved in business and have been a business leader, investor, and as you said, vice chair of North Carolina Forward Party since.
Mm-hmm. So looks like you have a pretty professional studio right there. What are we doing to pay the bills back there? What's all that? I see hydrogen peroxide sterilizer. What's all that about?
Yeah, so I'm the COO and CFO of a med device company that was started here in Raleigh by a good friend and neighbor of mine. I've been here for about 4 years, and we sell med devices into the veterinary space. So that's what you're seeing behind me. And it's a great studio, and didn't want to miss the opportunity to take your call here.
So a lot of experience. You married a Tar Heel, so you're in the state. No choice about that. You are North Carolinian now. So tell us about why you got involved with the Forward Party.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So, my background in both sports and business, you have people that are on a team trying to make decisions that not everyone agrees on, but make decisions that are in the best faith of the team or the business, right? And that's what politics should be about. How do we move America, the state, our principles forward? And right now, as you guys have talked about and well aware, our politics are broken, right? We have 2 teams that are fighting against each other. They feel like they're not part of the same team, that they're competing, and that's not the way it should be. Democrats shouldn't be competing against Republicans. Republicans shouldn't be competing against Democrats. They should be working together for the best of our country. The Forward Party sees an opportunity to be that type of party, the type of party that is willing to grab a beer with a Democrat, grab a beer with a Republican, grab a beer with a Libertarian and say, what is best for the voters of North Carolina? And do I think that's possible in North Carolina? Absolutely. So if you look at how tight our Congress is in North Carolina, all it takes is a handful of people that are willing to work across the aisle, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or independents, and say, let's form a group of problem solvers and let's really move the needle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so when you're talking about our legislature is very close here in North Carolina.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Forward Party, one of your pillars was that you're trying to start local. We're not trying to attack this on a national scale yet. That you're trying to build it from the grassroots area more, or is that?
That's
not
right.
true?
So we're North. That's right. We're the North Carolina Forward Party. So we're here focused on North Carolina. And to give you an example, you guys have a forward aligned independent April Montgomery that should be running in 2026. That's District 51, part of Lee County, not far from you guys. And she's forward aligned, right? She's a business person. She's coming in as an independent. She wants to work with Democrats and Republicans. We've got a forward aligned Republican mayor of Concord. We've got in the same city a forward-aligned councilwoman who's a Democrat. So you have Republicans and Democrats that are saying, we don't care about party labels. How do we work together? So that's part of our grassroots.
Okay, so being in the forward-aligned, as you say it, that is more your principles and your guiding mission, that we want you to work with other people. That it's not like they got to be the Forward Party. They can be a Republican or Democrat with the Forward Party platform alignment. That's
absolutely. And
okay.
And that's a great comment. There's a flip side of that too, though. So we are working to get ballot access. So right now we don't have ballot access. We're working to get ballot access. We expect that in 2027 and running candidates in 2020 and 2028.
Okay. So that still is a concern of you guys. Well,
so let me ask a question here. You say you want to get ballot access. So that would be a third party, and you would support both Republicans and Democrats? Or like, let's say we have somebody that is a Republican. Pretend for a moment, and we live in a fake world, where April Montgomery, because you mentioned her, is a Republican, but she is a, what did you say, forward aligned. Forward aligned. Are you saying that she would be your candidate also? Or a third additional person?
So great question. So right now we don't have ballot access. So you can't be a forward party candidate. You can be forward aligned. Once we get ballot access, then we can run our own candidates. And hopefully someone like April Montgomery would become a forward party candidate. But even if people don't run under the banner of the Forward Party, we still are looking for people that want to work across the aisle, that care more for the voters than their parties. So even if they're a Republican that wants to stay a Republican, doesn't want to join the Forward Party, if they say, you know what, we are willing to work across the aisle and we will support forward-aligned candidate, that's great. Right? We don't care about party labels. We care about solving problems.
Basically, the Forward Party, it's primarily about election reform, or is the ballot access more primary goal for you guys right now? Like, are you trying to be that third party, or are you more are you happier with just having more people aligned with your platform on either side of the aisle?
Yeah, great comments. No, we're definitely trying to get ballot access and be a third party.
Okay.
So there's no question there. And Laura, we don't have ballot access yet, so we can't officially run candidates. So that's why people are willing to sign up and say they're forward aligned.
To be fair, I know a lot of candidates, and I have yet to find a candidate that says, I don't want to work with the other side. Now, nationally, and I would say the media makes a lot big divide. And I will say that a lot of the times on the big issues, nationally, they vote along party lines. However, locally, I disagree. I think the Republicans and the Democrats, along the people and the candidates, are agreeing to work together. So I'm perplexed.
No, I appreciate the question.
Alignment.
Yeah, no. So Laura, I appreciate the question. So more than just what people say, what do they do? Right. So more than people saying, I am willing to work across party lines, what do they do? Right. And if you look at the most recent midterm, the primaries we just had, you had 4 Democrats that were willing to support the override of Governor Josh Stein's vetoes, right? Mm-hmm. All 4 of those Democrats were essentially blackballed by the Democratic Party and lost their primaries. Mm-hmm. So that's showing where people who do work across the aisle on some big issues, they get excommunicated from their party, and that's a problem. right? We don't want that. We want parties that want their candidates to be for the voters. And we don't want to punish candidates that are for the voters but don't vote with their party all the time. And I'll give you some examples of where I don't see some cross-party alignment, right? If you ask people, Laura, to your point, and you ask politicians, who's for term limits, right? Something that the Forward Party is very for, and something that Democrats say they're for, Republicans say they're for, yet term limits never pass. Why is that, right? If they really wanted to work across the aisle, if they were really there to support the voters, why does something that has such broad support not ever pass?
Well,
that's an example of election reform that we would support.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't you look at people that support the Convention of States, because that's for term limits and balancing the budget and all kinds of things? And I'm actually a member of the.
Is that another
Convention of States? Is that actually they're petitioning to get access or to have a Convention of States like they did way back when to address some issues, balancing the budget. We can't spend more than the country brings in, so we stop operating in a deficit. Term limits, but each state has to get people to vote for that. And there are local officials that have voted for it, and there's one local official that I know for a fact has voted against it. So I am for term limits too, because I am a member of the Convention of States.
So Lennie, does the Forward Party have like a loftier platform for not just North Carolina, but nationwide? Like, are they looking at these things like balancing the budget, stuff like that? I mean, is that part of what you guys do?
Yeah, it's a great comment. So there is a National Forward Party. We are the North Carolina arm of the National Forward Party. What the National Forward Party does focus on, big picture, is going to be a lot of the election reform. I don't believe they have a stance on balanced budget, although, Laura, I personally am very supportive of that as well. The states do it. Why doesn't the federal government do it? All for it. You would have carve-outs for time of war and stuff like that when you do have to spend above your intake. But I agree with that. I'd be all for it. If the states can do it, why can't the national government do it? But so, we are an individual arm of the federal Forward Party, so we are focused here in North Carolina.
Okay, so let's talk about the ranked choice voting. I've got a whole segment here devoted to all that. So, just correct me if I'm wrong. So, voters are going to rank the candidates first, second, third. If no candidate wins the majority, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and votes are redistributed until someone reaches 50%. Is that where we're at?
It's a good opener. So not necessarily ranked candidates 1, 2, 3. You can rank as many as you want. So if there's 6 candidates, 7 candidates, you can go down the entire process.
Okay.
The redistribution of the votes is something that I would phrase a little bit differently. And the way I like talking through it is, let's talk about a traditional runoff election, right? Okay. So in Georgia, they've had 2 big Senate elections where neither candidate reached 50%, and there was 3 or 4 candidates running. So what did they do? They had a runoff election. So 3-4 months down the line, they run a whole other election. And what happens? People come back and they vote again. If their first choice was still in, they're going to vote for their first choice again. If their first choice is not in, then they re-vote. That's what ranked choice voting is. It's also known as instant runoff. It's the same thing. So Laura, I see the head nod. I'd love to talk about it. This is great. So if you think about it, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lennie. No. Finish your thought.
So you rank your candidates, right? Let's put it in terms of college teams, right? Duke University, University of North Carolina, East Carolina University, NC State, Fayetteville State, whatever. You rank your teams, right? My first choice as a Duke guy is going to be Duke, right? My second choice is going to be anyone but UNC. So I'll put Fayetteville State up there. Okay. This vote goes to everybody. Everybody gets to rank. So my first choice is Duke. Second choice is Fayetteville State. Now in the election, Duke doesn't win 50%. Nobody wins 50%, but Duke is dropped out because they had the lowest vote getters, right? Now in a real runoff, I would go back, or in a formal runoff, I would go back and I'd vote for Fayetteville State. Duke's out. Fayetteville State's my second choice. So in an instant runoff election, the same thing happens. If your number one choice drops out, your second choice then gets elevated. Everyone still gets a vote. There is no redistribution, right? If your first choice, Laura, was UNC, UNC's still there. Your vote counts again. So I don't love the term a redistribution of votes. It's the same thing as a runoff.
Well, Lennie, I'm going to surprise you, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on screen the recent primary we had, and I'm going to let you choose our county commissioners based the way you would do it.
Okay.
How about that?
Let's do it.
I already, let's see here. I pulled this stuff up, and we are here. Sorry.
Who can see that?
You cannot see that? Okay.
I have old people eyes.
I can see it.
You can see it? Okay.
That's what's important.
Okay. That's what's important, if the guests can see it. So we had, let's just stick with the county commissioners at large, because that seemed to be, I think they had more people than the District 1. Let's see, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they did. So to me, this is, when you talk about ranked choice, this is where would this come into play, and how would this have shook out? Well,
yeah. So if I'm looking at just that first dark blue section, it's a good Duke University color. I see Charles Evans, Veronica Jones, Tony Stewart. Let's just stick with them. Nobody won 50%, right? So it looks like 6 candidates. No one won 50%, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say that Laura voted, and her first choice was William Tunk Wesley, okay? And her second choice was Veronica Jones. In this scenario, the person with the lowest votes was William Tunk Wesley. So they would be dropped out in the instant runoff, right?
Okay.
For those who voted for Charles first, their vote still counts. They voted for Charles first. For those that voted for Veronica first, their vote still counts. They voted for Veronica first. The only impact is on William Wesley. Okay. If your second choice is Veronica, then in the instant runoff, just like what happened in real life, the instant runoff, your vote now would go to Veronica because your number one candidate, William, is no longer in. And that happens until someone wins 50%.
Okay.
So in this scenario, even if every single one of those votes went to Charles Evans, they still wouldn't be at 50%.
Do you have an example ballot or something to share with us?
It's kind of like the Iowa caucus.
Yeah, I'm trying to see how this
where they go
work.
in a room and everybody stands behind their candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, okay, let's vote. Now there's the lowest person in the room. Let's say it was Joe Blow Schmo. And Joe Blow Schmo only has 5 people and everybody else has 8. Nobody has 50%. So now all of these candidates go over to Joe Blow Schmo's corner and be like, come over to our corner, come over to our corner. And they move to somebody else's corner. Then they count again. Nobody has 50%. So then Tom, whatever, is like the lowest. So he leaves. So all those people come over to our corner, come over.
Until they hit
the 50%. Okay. So I would say that instead of actually being in instead of actually being in the room, I would say, well, my first choice is Joe Blow Schmo. And if he doesn't get through, I'm in this corner and I have to go to somebody else's corner, then I'm going to go to Tom's corner or whatever, and so on and so forth.
But see, you're in the room making that conscious choice. We're trying to get voters to understand
it's very difficult
how to do that on a ballot. And that's why I was
let's all go
say,
in a big room like they do in Iowa. I love the Iowa caucuses. They've got cheerleaders and all kinds of stuff.
I would just love the turnout. That'd be a lot of fun, I think.
I think it would make the turnout even more if we could do it that way.
I love that description, Laura. You nailed it. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
She's got the good ideas. I just have the technical stuff going on here. Yeah. Well, Lennie, I was going to ask you, do you have a sample ballot, or is there one like on your website that would show?
California does ranked voting.
That would show like what this ballot would look like as an example?
Yeah. So I don't know if we have it on our website. I can certainly get you them. Okay. And it has been right now, instant runoffs are done by about 16 to 20 million people in America already. So it is not an uncommon thing. And what people, a great little plug for our awesome state, in Kinston, North Carolina, you have the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center that helps municipalities all over the country set up their ballots, analyze their software to make sure they can do it with their systems. So we have a great resource in Kinston right now to help with ballot design and all those types of things you're talking about. I do want to go back to what Laura said, though, because she did a really good job of helping visualize that. But now let's talk about how that happens in practice, right? So let's go back to those caucuses. And if you know there's a chance that you're not going to win 50%, and you're going to have to convince supporters of other candidates that, hey, if your candidate doesn't win 50% and they're kind of dropped out from the race, come vote with us, right? We might not agree with everything your candidate says, but we agree with it a lot. Let me agree with a lot of what they say. Let me explain where we have similarities. Think about how that changes politics and advertising and the discussion, because no longer, if I'm Charles Evans, am I going to be telling the William Wesley supporters that William Wesley's a moron? I'm going to say, look, you might like William better than me.
What if he is a moron?
Were you listening to some of the rumors about our campaigns? How did you know?
Exactly.
No. Charles Evans is a good candidate and no, he's not like that. But anyway, go ahead, Lennie.
So look, if I'm running in an instant runoff election and there are people that I flat out disagree, if I'm a Republican running an instant runoff Republican election and there's other Republicans that I flat out disagree and can't stand being around, and I don't like any of their policies, then sure, I'm not going to say I agree with a lot of what this person does. But that's not the case. Most of the time, there are policies that people can agree with, can align with, and unless you really have a toxic relationship, you're going to say, look, I might not be your first choice. You like this person, this candidate, but let me tell you about where we agree on things. Instead of doing the scorched earth, which we currently do with our politics, right? Mm-hmm. Look at what happened. Just look in North Carolina. There's been some pretty hotly contested primaries, right, where people are saying some pretty negative things about people within their own party because they've got to win at all costs. If it's more like instant runoffs, more like the caucus that Laura described, you want to convince supporters of other candidates that, hey, I'm pretty close to what you like. If your candidate drops out, come and support me. And that changes the entire dialogue, the vitriol, the type of marketing you get, which is just a huge impact.
So
anything that California does, though, I just disagree with.
I do have a problem with that. Yeah. I don't want to identify with California in any shape or form.
Would you identify with the U.S. military in the South because they do instant runoffs for overseas ballots?
Yeah, I can go along with that one a lot better. Okay. Being from Fort Bragg and all, we can agree with that. But so ranked choice voting is because Laura mentioned the caucuses and all, and that sounds like an event to be seen. But is ranked choice voting something that we've gotten away from, or something that was just only used sparingly throughout the country and now you see the need? So was it used previously more widespread?
And what are the negatives? Because we're speaking to you and you're for it. So you're going to give us the highlights. Tell me about the negatives of ranked choice.
Sure. Always a great question. I'll answer both the questions. It is not something that's really gone away from. It is something that is gaining steam in America. It's been around for over 100 years. Other countries use it. We use it in everyday life. There was we got to follow on to that, Peter, that I'll get to in a second. I do want to answer Laura's questions. So some of the negatives that people claim that I don't, I'll give you a negative and I'll tell you that I disagree with it. One negative is it's too complicated for voters to understand. Right? They don't understand, how to rank people. I think that's a terrible comment, right? 16 to 20 million Americans do it now.
Kind of like they can't get an ID. Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not one.
We're making too big of something that's there, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm supportive of voter ID, no issue. We need it to fly a plane. We need to drive a car. We need it to get a gun. We can get it to vote, right?
Now, is that Lennie supporting it, or is the Forward Party supporting the voter ID? Just to be clear.
I can speak to the Forward Party in North Carolina. It's already in North Carolina. We have no issue with it. I can't speak to national. I can speak to North Carolina. So a North Carolina Forward Party candidate would not be trying to repeal voter ID. How about that?
Okay. Fair enough.
And yes, Lennie Friedman supports it. One comment is it's just too complicated, right? We can't explain to people how to rank candidates. That's ridiculous. Right? We can rank what we want for dinner: pizza, burgers, burrito. It's not very hard. The other negative that people talk about is it complicates ballots. I don't disagree with that. The ballot becomes bigger, right? Because you have to have selections for first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, so on and so forth. But as I mentioned, in Kinston, North Carolina, we got a group that is dedicated to supporting ballot build-outs, explaining it. That's your second negative. Third is that you do need software to be able to handle the count. It's not a complicated count, but like any computer, you need that application on it. So we would have to update some of the software, which is just software. You just update your systems in North Carolina. Those are the three issues that people will talk about.
Well, so I think it was our pre-election show from last Monday, the 2nd, before the primary, we brought up the fact there was a local article that went out regarding I believe it's ESS machines, the tabulators, I think the ES 200 or 400, whatever the number is, that there was a software update, and immediately all the conspiracy theorists just lost their minds. But the software update had happened in November of 2025, so it wasn't like right before our election, but it was misconstrued. Would this be capable on the machines and stuff that we already kind of own, or are we looking at another additional because it is time for our board to start buying new equipment? I was told that. So is there equipment out there now that handles this and it's just a software thing, or are we looking at a new investment?
So my understanding, and I am not an expert, but I have had lots of conversations on this. Yeah, it should just be a simple software update. You have to buy the software, you have to install it. But then, and rightly so, I have no issues with this. Then the North Carolina Board of Elections is going to have to do testing, make sure that they've confirmed it. It's already used throughout the country, but North Carolina is going to want to do their own confirmation.
Okay, so we're not starting from scratch. There are
correct
solutions out there, and hopefully we can just reprogram our slow machines.
How long will it take to count? Will it increase the time that it takes to count ballots? As far as
you have to wait for
things like that.
Yeah, you have to wait for all the ballots to get in, but it's a computer program. The computer program itself doesn't take time. What takes time is every vote counts, right? So if you think about what's going on now with Page and Berger, right? You're talking about a 2-vote, 30-vote. Every vote counts. So you got to wait for the votes to get in, because if there isn't a 50% winner, then you have to go through the instant runoff process.
I think, Laura, what did you have the other day? 23 votes. It's separated now. The Berger and Page thing.
Yes, 23.
We talked about it Monday. It was up to 23 now. So it's
waiting for the military votes to come
definitely in. Less than 1% in that race. And the thing about that is how you mentioned the messaging and the vitriol of some of these campaigns. I mean, Berger spent quite a bit of money on his
imagine
election.
that it wouldn't be too difficult to do a line of your first choices, a line of your second choices, a line of your third choices, so that the computer just sees the first choice.
Well, and I went and peeped the North Carolina Forward Party page, and it didn't have anything there. So I'm going to tell Lennie.
I would just say that we would need to make sure that the software, all the computers were air gapped, obviously, and then the software was approved by both parties, or all 10 parties, or Green Party, Libertarian Party. Each party would have to be given a copy of the software to make sure there's no backdoors or,
Look, right now in North Carolina, and I'm not sure if every county uses our equipment. So I always say, look, speak to what I know, which is Cumberland County. And, our machines there is no internet. There's not a way to plug it in. It's a thumb drive. You have to walk it to.
That doesn't mean that the computer program itself couldn't be corrupted.
True. Listen, I always said that you can probably cheat an election, but we're not like Arizona here. And to do it here, I think you need at least 4 or 5 people complicit per precinct.
Right.
If you want to really,
as long as we have paper ballots, I'm good. When we start doing the only electronic, I'm out.
Well,
nope.
And I think some counties are still using those electronic. We got rid of them here in Cumberland County, but I think some of them still use. So, and as I think about it, I think Lennie's right. It's a software thing.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure these scanners can just scan something else. But I wonder, who do we talk to add something to the Forward Party platform? I want to add just one thing. I want to have the ballots flipped. I want my local races first, on down to the popular. Make people invest more in learning about who the hell is in their pocketbook 7 days a week with property tax, sales tax, vehicle tax, all the stuff that actually impacts us. I always tell people the federal government's up
I second
in my
that
pocket
motion.
once a year.
As a parliamentarian, I second that motion.
You second that motion?
I do.
Okay. Can I?
I like it too. It's a great idea, right? It's nudging people to have to look at their local candidates first. I like it.
Well, it just you can have that one for free, but pass it up the chain if you don't mind. That's really
great.
Having run for local offices, I think Laura and I would agree that would have helped out a little bit.
If only 41 more people would have voted me.
Yeah, you were only I was only 179 away, so
I was 41. So
yeah, even better. So, what other questions we got for Lennie? I mean, this has been informative. I thought he was just going to choose me a new county commissioner. That's why I put him on the spot. I was like, here.
Well, we don't know how people would have, but we don't know how we would have. That guy would have fallen off, and then we don't know how they would have voted.
So, one of the things for the Ford Party, you guys want open primaries. In other words, right now,
I don't like that.
Calm down. I'm registered Republican, so I get a Republican ballot. If I'm unaffiliated, I get to choose. So, are you advocating for basically there's just one ballot, like it would be in a general election?
So right now, North Carolina, we have semi-closed primaries, right? So if you're an independent, you can choose to go for Republican ticket, or you can choose to go the Democratic ticket. You can't go to both.
Okay.
Open primaries is certainly, I think, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, a bigger push on the national level.
Okay.
The North Carolina Forward Party focuses more on term limits, anti-gerrymandering, and instant runoffs, right? Those are what I would say the big three are. When an open primary, the theory behind an open primary is that it forces people to have to vote for it forces politicians to have to communicate to all voters instead of just the voters in their party, because it's the general. Longer debate. It's not something that I personally push for in North Carolina. I will talk to you all day long about instant runoffs. I'm pretty happy with the semi-closed primaries. I wouldn't want closed primaries, because then you block out 40% of the electorate in North Carolina, because independents couldn't vote. But I'm okay with the semi-closed primaries.
I don't believe in open. I think that you belong to a party for a reason. And I think you should be able to elect your own representatives. I'm not a huge big fan of the semi-closed ones either. If you want to be an independent, I respect that. You can vote for whomever you would please, but you pick a side.
Yeah.
Pick a side.
Eventually pick a side. But I think that's kind of that binary thinking that the Ford Party's trying to combat. If I'm not mistaken. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
There are benefits to having there's a benefit to being a member of a party, and you should be able to reap some of those benefits. And we together work towards principles, and the principles of the Republican Party are very
conservative.
Conservative. So to have somebody that is an independent or whatever pull a Republican ballot in order to affect the Republican representatives, I disagree. I don't want somebody that is pro something that I'm absolutely against, like boys and girls sports. And they're like, I'm an independent, and I know that Tom is running for office, and even though he's a Republican, he's okay with boys and girls sports. So I'm going to fix the numbers so that Tom gets to win, as opposed to me as a Republican is against boys and girls sports 1,012 million%, if that's even a percentage. But yes,
so
I don't like that.
Just going back to my question, if it was an open primary, then the ballot would resemble that of a general election. You would have all parties on that one ballot in an open
Democrats
primary.
The Democrats have an edge over that, because there are more Democrats than there are Republican, so they would have an edge. And I am against.
Well, in our particular situation here, Lennie, we have 150,000 Democrat and unaffiliated versus 50,000 Republicans in Cumberland County.
The Democrats would pick and we would not, as Republicans, we would not get our people.
They would
voted.
run the table.
That's
all
exactly
the time.
right.
Yeah.
I'm against that.
Yeah,
that's why the Democrats can't win in California.
That's why the Democrats can't win in California?
That why the Republicans can't win in California.
There you
I
go.
apologize.
Got it. Yeah. So let's go back on that. So I have a question there. And again, I'm not expert in open primaries, but in an open primary, why do you think who wins between? I guess if if your statement was, I'm trying to understand your statement, because let's say you don't have open primaries and you have a Republican candidate, a Democratic candidate. Based on your math, if it's true that there's more Democrats than Republicans, and the Democrat would still win in the general. So I don't know that conversation, that comment.
Not necessarily, but the Democrats would always win the primary because there's more of them, and you can persuade people.
But an open primary just makes a general, essentially. Sorry, Laura. It just is a general. Yeah. It's not more a primary. So if your argument, if the way you described it was accurate, then regardless of having a primary, Democrats would always win based on those numbers. So it just goes right to a general. That's all an open primary is. You're just going to a general.
It would be,
and if the Republicans win in the general now, they would likely still win in an open primary.
Mm-hmm. I think the fear is being, some people argue about the Electoral College and things like that because we have safeguards built into our system, such as the Electoral College, but because you don't want the heavily populated, urban centers of New York and Miami and LA determining for the rest of middle America, so we have that college system, so we prevent that.
But and I'm not anti that at all.
Primary would essentially, like I said, I don't want to call an affiliated group with the Democrats, but you don't know how they're going to vote. So I'm just putting 50,000 Republicans against 150,000 of everybody else. And I think that would push the everybody else's to the November races in an open primary.
Yeah. So
in this specific use case, I think it would be detrimental to anything conservative based.
Yeah. So first, when you were talking about open primaries on a national level, because you brought up the Electoral College, that's a whole different argument, right? Like that is a completely different thing. And if you look at the North Carolina Forward Party and even the National Forward Party, they don't mention anything about getting rid of the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. That's not a discussion, right? And we certainly don't have it.
I'm just using it as a safeguard in our system that's been built in.
Let me put it for an example like this. Okay. You have 100,000 Democrats and you have 50,000 Republicans. Okay. You're making it possibly so that a Republican can't even select a Republican because that 150,000 Democrats will pick their first choice as a Democrat and their second choice as a Democrat. And the Republicans can't even get to the 50%. And we never get a chance to even go up against the Democrat because those 100,000 will pick their first choice and their second choice, and they will get to 50% prior to a Republican. We take care of ours, you take care of yours, and we meet in the middle at the general. Just a thought.
No, I appreciate it. I guess, and this is where I'm not an advocate for open primaries, so I could be explaining it wrong. But to me, an open primary, you're getting rid of primaries. It's just a general.
Yeah.
Right. Like you just have a flat out general. So there is no second. It's just the general. Right. We're not going to have primaries. We're just going to have a general election. And by that definition, Laura, if you were right, then by those numbers, the Republican would never win. And in North Carolina, they do. Right. They win strongly. So I'm not here to advocate for open primaries. I haven't talked about open primaries, but my understanding of an open primary is it's just a general essentially.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to ask you. So a lot of Americans, they say they're frustrated with major parties, but frustration alone does not build a movement. We've seen it. What would you say to a North Carolina voter who likes the idea of a political reform, but they're still worried that supporting a third party candidate could be throwing away their vote? How do you respond to that?
That's why we need instant runoffs, because with instant runoffs, you don't throw away your vote. That's the whole point. Okay. And by having a actionable third party, especially on the local levels, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to talk about, winning the governorship or winning a state senator. But if you want to vote for someone to be mayor of Concord or Fayetteville or Holly Springs, then a third party has a really good chance. And they're the ones that are going to impact your day to day. So by having a forward party on the ballot, and in local elections, you really have a chance to make a dent. And then you start building, and then the party starts building momentum and has the ability to make more statewide changes.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's about that time. We've been chatting for about 40 minutes now. We did pretty good, Lennie.
Great.
It was nice having you. So, Mr. Lennie Friedman of the North Carolina Forward Party, we appreciate you joining us today. Mrs. Laura Mussler, thank you for fighting the sickness and illness and being here today.
My pleasure.
To everybody watching, please go to thecarolinacabinet.com for all of our episodes and links. We'll be returning Monday evening at 6 p.m.
See you then.
Until then, see you then. Have a good evening.
Great. Thanks, guys.